What's going on, CDL fans? Today we are talking about roster mania after Major 1. With the results we saw at Major 1, we're definitely going to see a bunch of teams making changes, and I think a bunch of teams need to make changes. So I'm going to go through every single team, and I have them in 3 categories. I have needs change, might make a change, and won't make a change. And also, let me know what you think about this little overlay I made. I decided just to give something a little bit different, just so it's not like a full face webcam. But let's start off with the easy ones. We'll start off with the won't make a change. I definitely think Toronto Ultra, Atlanta FaZe, and OPTIC Texas, as well as the New York Subliners, are teams that definitely will not make a change. There isn't really much that needs to be said about these teams. Obviously, 3 of those are the top 3 teams, as well as the New York Subliners are a team with a lot of individual talent on them. We saw how good they were last year. They think that they made an improvement by bringing in Sib, and obviously Sib is an incredible individual player. So I think on the term of the New York Subliners, if they take that LA Thieves approach like we saw in Vanguard, you stack up the talent, you might struggle in the beginning of the year, but as the year progresses, you get better, you figure it out. Hopefully, you're competing for championships by the end. Now we get into that might make a change tier. This is teams that I think has a reasonable case to not make a change, but definitely could benefit from one. And starting it off, I do have the Minnesota Rokkr. This is a team that I think probably doesn't make a change because of how good they did at the major and how much better they've been in recent weeks from online leading up into the major and then obviously at the event. The only thing I could see out of Minnesota here is it's going to be hard to compete with the top teams. All of their losses this season have come against these upper echelon teams, you know, the Ultras, the OPTICs, the Subliners, things like that. So this might be a Rokkr team that can solidify themselves as maybe a 5th team for most of the season, but they might need to make a change if they want to compete with some of these upper echelon teams. I think there's many different ways they could go about it. They could look at bringing in someone over Awakening, who I think over the course of the whole season has been one of their, or if not their most disappointing players so far. At the event on LAN, he did look better, so maybe that is his saving grace. I think Lamar has been actually pretty solid this season, definitely better on LAN. Vivid and Linz have both been really good. Obviously, Vivid usually has consistency issues like we've seen throughout a majority of his career. And then Linz, rookie of the year right now, honestly, so I think he definitely stays. I think there's an opportunity for Rokkr to try to bring in maybe a new player as someone they think is an up on the talent, maybe for Awakening, or someone who could just be a little bit more consistent than he has been so far this season in the slaying department. But right now, Minnesota Rokkr are kind of teetering on that edge for me of not making a change. The next team in this tier is the Miami Heretics. Miami is a team that I think has a case to make or not make a change, being as they have Eric Boom, who is one of the better challengers players on their bench, someone that they've obviously played with in the past that originally was supposed to start this season over Journey. I think there's a possibility that because Journey had a tough LAN, they bring in Eric Boom to replace him heading into Major 2 qualifiers. But I also think, at the very least, maybe they should give Journey a couple more online matches to see how he does. And if it's not working out, then you bring in Eric Boom. But for now, the Miami Heretics team, I think, are in a place where either way, we know they can kind of compete with the top teams because we've seen them beat the likes of OPTIC online. But then on LAN, definitely struggled. Another team in that might need to make a change category is the LA Gorillas. Also, this is probably the biggest category, right? I think there's a lot of teams that could make a change, but maybe won't. And LA Gorillas are the next team. LAG showed promise at the major, right? They reverse swept the Legion. They beat LA Thieves. They obviously competed pretty well at the major. Do I think they can compete with the top teams? Probably not. It's kind of what I said with Rokkr. It could be a case here where it's like, if you're cool with fighting for top 6 a lot of the year, then you keep this team. But if you want to really try to compete with these top guys, you could look at making a change. DiamondCon has been exceptional so far this season. I think Estriel's had a good rookie year, and Fame and Assault have both had their, times where they look really, really good. Honestly, for this LAG team, I don't know exactly who you swap out, right? A lot of people would say Fame because he's been a little bit struggling in Respawn. Great at SND, though, but he was good on LAN. Same thing with Assault. He's good in some modes, not as great in others, has his moments and has his bad moments as well. This LAG team, I really think, fits perfectly in I don't know who you make, who you switch out, who you drop, and who you add, but I definitely think this is a team that could get better if they made a change. Then we have 2 more teams in this tier, in my opinion. Next up, I have the Royal Ravens. The Ravens, honestly, they're a team that looked much better on LAN than they did online. This team, as they brought in Fellow, they brought in Tej, they look much better than they did previously. I feel bad for Real, obviously, because he kind of like lost his spot, I guess you could say, which was something that wasn't under his control. But I think this fellow Tej, Clay, Gwyn team looks pretty solid. A team that obviously they beat NYSL, a team that I think could compete, but they also are on that point where it's like, are they going to compete with Ultra, FaZe, OPTIC? I don't really know. So it's a possibility they make a change, but they haven't really ran with the current team that long. So it might be worth testing it out a little more online. And then last but not least, the last team in this maybe tier for me is the Boston Breach. Now, Boston is a team a lot of people I see calling for Capsule to get dropped. Obviously, I think if you look at that team, Capsule is probably the top name on the list if you're going to make a change. Snoopy, I think, has had a solid rookie year. Slasher and Priest are world champions, have been great. Even they won last year. They both won an event, or Priest won multiple, but they both won events last year. I think Capsule is kind of that guy on the list that maybe you make a move to take him. I think it is a case of like, do you try to get more talent? The longer you wait to make a change, the less talent in challengers there's going to be because those top guys are going to get picked up by other teams. But for me, this team looks good. They've shown promise. They're the only team to beat Toronto Ultra. Whether you want to call that a fluke or not, it's up to you. But this Boston team, I think, has shown promise, competed with top teams, taken NYSL to a Game 5, taken FaZe to a later series. Overall, I think this team, they can compete with upper teams. I think maybe, in my mind, give them a little bit more time. But if they think, hey, we could try to get someone like Kremp, who Slasher was talking to on the stream. We all saw that. They were in the stands talking to each other during the matches. Maybe you try to bring in someone like that. But also, apparently, Zed, the coach of the team, said on stream they won't be making a change. So I think they could not make a change. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them make a one-player swap. And now we get into that definitely needs a change, in my opinion. And I'm going to start out with the Seattle Surge. Might be surprising considering how they did at the event. But honestly, for me, and it pains me to say this because I love this guy. He's had a great career. He seems like a super cool dude. But Arcitys just really isn't it, I don't think, on this team. He's kind of the guy that I feel like always stands out each series as kind of being disappointing. He didn't have a great year last year. He hasn't had a great season so far this season. Illy has been good. Hook has been solid. Abuza has been solid. And for me, I think they are one piece away from really competing for a top 5 spot every single major, competing with these top teams. And I think they're in a very cool opportunity, a very cool spot where they could kind of bring in whoever they want, right? They could bring in an SMG player and move Abuza to the AR, which we saw him play in Challengers last year. They could bring in a guy who's more of a flex option, which I think makes sense because Hook is more of your, SMG, being as there's typically only one SMG on the team on a lot of these maps. Or you could bring in a main AR, keep Abuza and Hook on the SMGs, keep Illy on your flex, and then bring in someone as an AR. They could literally bring in anyone from any role, which I think is a really sick opportunity for the Surge here. Bringing in someone like Asim could be really cool. We've seen Asim and Hook team together in the past, so maybe you don't want to do that again. But bringing in someone like Asim, who we've seen flex a bit this season in Challengers, could be really cool. Overall, I think Seattle should make a change. And like I said, it hurts me to say that because I really like Alec. But I think they should make a change if they want to be a team that can compete, especially before all the top challengers' talent gets taken up by other teams. Then the next team is the Las Vegas Legion. Now, this is another team that I think is one piece away from really competing for top 6 on a consistent basis. Purge, he seems like a cool kid. It's obviously only his rookie season. We haven't seen a ton of him, right? It's only been one major, right? They've played like, 9 or 10 matches so far. But he's been really bad in Respawn. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. He's good in SND. He's had his moments where he's looked solid, but he's been pretty consistently bad in Respawn. And if you want to be good in this league, you got to be good in Respawn because you play 3 Respawns in a best of 5 series. That's more than half of the maps, right? So I think that if you take out Purge, you bring in someone to run that flex spot that's going to be a bit more consistent in Respawn and consistent in the slaying department. This team could look nasty because honestly, Attach, I think, has looked really good. Nero has looked solid. Sandy has done his thing as well. And I think, like I said, for Surge, I think Purge, it just rhymed, spitting bars over here. I think Purge is that odd man out on this team, unfortunately. Like I said, you bring in a flex that can be consistent in the slaying department, and I really think this team can compete. They've been reverse swept 3 times this year. So they're able to win the first 2 maps, right? Even despite Purge's struggles in that map 1 and Respawn. But you just got to figure out a way to close out series, win a control, or win that map for a hard point. because once they get to game 5, I mean, who really knows what's going on in that camp? But if they can get someone in that's better in respawn, I really, really, really believe this Legion team can be top 6. And then last but not least, I saved the best for last. I mean, if you've watched my channel before, you know I am an LA Thieves fan. And LAT are by far the worst team in the league at this current moment. And definitely the team that I think needs to make the most changes based on what we've seen so far through Major 1 quals and at the event. I think at the very least, LAT needs to make a 2-person change, maybe even a 3-person change. I think Dan Ghosty definitely stays on LAN. He looked really good in our 1 series against LAG. And we saw what he did last year on OPTIC. I think Ghosty has been solid and I think can definitely, you know, stay on the team. When it comes to the 2 SMGs, Jodeci's and Afro, honestly, both have been very inconsistent this season. I think there's a case to get rid of them both. I think there's a case to maybe keep one of them. Honestly, you could pick either one of them. Neither one has really impressed me over the other. And then, unfortunately, I think Cammy probably has to go on this team. We've seen a little bit out of Cammy, especially in that Ravens series online right before the major. But he's been super, you know, honestly, he's been super consistent at not being very great so far this season, which hurts me to say because I do like Cammy. But I think at the very least, this team makes a 2, if not a 3-person change. I think it would be super sick to see us bring in the core of FaZe Black, right? If you can get Kremp, Asim, and Brack to be your 3, if you can get, you know, maybe just Kremp and Asim, maybe just Kremp and Brack. It depends what players you want to swap out. But honestly, bringing in challengers players that are from the same team, right? You can even look at Pixie, Nasty, Beans, Bance, any of the guys on that team. You keep players that have been playing together, already have the chemistry, so it doesn't take as much to build that up, as well as these challengers players have been playing on the new patch. So maybe bringing in challengers players would give you a little bit of a step up heading into week 1 or week 2 of Major 2 qualifiers, as there is the new patch with the hardpoint rotations and such. But I think that's definitely, you know, moves that needs to be made. And LA Thieves are definitely the top team on the list that has to make moves. They've won 1 hardpoint this year. I mean, it's just bad. Overall, I would love to see them pick up most of the FaZe Black team, honestly. But that is kind of my roster mania predictions, wish list sort of deal for all 12 teams in the league. Let me know if there's any team you think specifically needs to make a change that maybe I said might not have to make a change. I would love to hear what you have to say. I saw people saying in my comments, in my watch party over this weekend, that every single team outside the top 4 needs to make a change because at the end of the day, they're just not going to compete with the top 4. And they're honestly probably right to an extent. But also, I think some of these teams like Minnesota maybe has proven that they kind of like are good enough to be in that top 5 conversation. Maybe they just need to tweak a little bit of things here and there to beat out a top 4 team. But either way, let me know what you think in the comments. And like I said earlier, sub to the channel for more content like this. And let me know what you think about this style video, this sort of talking head, got this little overlay on screen sort of deal where I just break down my thoughts. I'd love to know what you guys think. And with all that being said, hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.